One moment they are arguing about land, trust, and who owns what, and the next moment a pregnancy test lands in the middle of a relationship already on fire. No romance. No soft music energy. Pure panic. You can see it on Luke's face when the word pregnant enters the room. Not excitement. Not joy. Fear. The kind of fear people feel when consequences arrive before decisions feel settled. And while Luke and Madeline stand frozen over a plastic stick, another door opens somewhere else where Greta sits across from Matthew's father, being asked to carry emotional weight she did not create. This episode does not ease anyone in. It slams the gas. The pregnancy scare does not bring them closer. It exposes cracks they kept stepping around. Money issues, power shifts, trust worn thin. The kind of relationship where even good news would land wrong. And right when you think the tension stays there, the story cuts to Greta, who already ended things, now being pulled back into the emotional aftermath by someone who loves Matthew and refuses to accept the ending. The tone shifts fast. One couple stares at a test while questioning a future. Another faces guilt dressed up as concern. Pressure moves from private to public, from inside a relationship to outside voices pushing back in. This episode stops pretending love fixes problems. It asks a harder question. What happens when staying together feels safer than being honest, even when honesty hurts less in the long run? So here we are, two couples, two breaking points, one theme running through all of it. When fear drives the choice, does love ever get a fair chance to lead? Last episode ended with Luke and Madeline standing on opposite sides of a promise that already felt broken. What started as a dream about building something together turned into a paperwork reality where one name mattered more than the other. Luke kept the hotel. Luke kept most of the land. Madeline got offered a smaller piece off to the side, framed as a future house, framed as security, framed as partnership. And the problem was not the land. The problem was trust cracking in real time. She heard one plan. He executed another. From her view, the switch felt sneaky. From his view, it felt practical. That gap never closed. It stayed hot. You could feel it in every conversation afterward. The fight never cooled. It simmered through dinner. It simmered through silence. It simmered through the night. By the time the sun came up, neither one felt safe inside the relationship. One felt controlled. The other felt accused. No winners there. Luke talked about providing. Madeline talked about being seen. Both talked past each other. He wanted trust without questions. She wanted protection without conditions. And when those wants collide, nothing soft survives the impact. You could sense how thin the ground felt beneath them. Every sentence landed sharp. Every pause felt loaded. That kind of tension does not fade on its own. It waits for something bigger to expose it. And this is where everything starts to feel heavier, because the next moment pulls the rug out from under all of them. Before we get back to that shock, the episode quietly reminds us how fast expectations build when people believe they are safe. Over with Greta and Matthew, things looked calm not long ago. Warm, even. Family dinners. Parents welcoming her with open arms. Plans spoken out loud without hesitation. The story sold itself as steady. Two thoughtful people. Long-distance struggles. Big feelings handled with maturity. Or so it seemed. Greta did not walk into chaos. She walked into certainty. Matthew loved her. His parents adored her. The future felt mapped, which is why the break hits harder. When someone steps away from stability, people search for reasons. Stress, timing, doubt. Anything easier than accepting a feeling changed. And when Greta ended it, the emotional whiplash hit everyone around her. The warmth did not disappear slowly. It snapped. One decision rewrote every role, from partner to problem, from future family to unfinished business. And while Greta sat with guilt, Matthew sat with heartbreak, and his parents sat with confusion, each person reacted from their own pain. None of them prepared for how fast love turned into pressure. Pay attention here, because this is the point where comfort turns into obligation, and people stop asking how someone feels and start asking why they are not trying harder. Back with Luke and Madeline, that same pattern already showed signs. Expectations set without backup plans. Promises spoken without clarity. A relationship moving forward on hope rather than alignment. The land deal cracked trust. The arguing kept it open. Neither person paused long enough to reset. They both pushed forward while emotionally exhausted. The episode keeps circling one idea without spelling it out. Timing ruins relationships more quietly than betrayal ever does. Meet too early. Build too fast. Commit before trust settles. Every conflict feels bigger because the foundation never finished curing. Luke and Madeline argue like people rushing a future. Greta and Matthew unravel like people who believe the future already arrived. And right as you start wondering whether timing is the real enemy here, the episode lines up the moment that makes waiting impossible. The room feels smaller the moment the word pregnancy enters the conversation, not because of space, but because options start disappearing. Luke freezes, Madeline spirals. Neither one moves toward the other. They move inward. Panic does not sound loud here. Panic sounds clipped. Short sentences, avoided eye contact, hands hovering without touching. This is not two people imagining a future. This is two people bracing for impact. Madeline does not want to take the test. That hesitation matters. Fear is already doing the talking. Fear of the result. Fear of what the result would demand. Fear of being locked into a situation where she already feels powerless. Luke pushes for answers. He wants certainty. He wants the unknown gone. That difference alone tells you how uneven this moment feels. One person seeks control through information. The other seeks safety through delay. The age gap sits in the room without being named. So does money. So does ownership. Luke owns the hotel. Luke owns the land. Luke decides how security gets distributed. Madeline feels that imbalance in her body. When she talks about needing her name on something, she is not chasing luxury. She is chasing proof she will not disappear if things go wrong. That fear did not start here. That fear learned her early. And this is where the discomfort settles in, because this moment exposes how safety means different things to different people. Luke tries to reframe the situation. He talks about family. He talks about life being a blessing. The words sound supportive on the surface. Underneath, something else hums. This feels less like confidence and more like self-calming. He needs the idea of stability to quiet his own fear. He needs to believe a baby would give meaning to the chaos. That does not make him cruel. It makes him human. It also makes the moment fragile. Madeline hears none of it as reassurance. She hears pressure. She hears expectation. She hears her future narrowing. Her body language tells the story before her words catch up. She pulls away. She shuts down. This is a young woman facing adult consequences without adult security. Love does not cushion that fall. Love sharpens it. Luke says he wants a family with her. He says she would be a good mother. Those statements land heavy. They carry promise without plan. When he says his feelings would not change, the words float without anchors. Trust does not grow from declarations. Trust grows from patterns. And their recent pattern holds shouting, secrecy, and unresolved power struggles. Stay with this moment, because reassurance delivered too early often hides fear rather than strength. The waiting stretches. Luke stands outside. He admits fear out loud. He says they are barely making it to the wedding. That honesty lands harder than his pep talk did. This is the real truth. A relationship struggling to cross one finish line should not sprint toward another. Even he knows it. The audience knows it. Madeline knows it too, even while wishing it were different. This is where attachment shows itself. Not the cute version, the survival version. Both of them cling to the idea of forever while doubting the present. Both hope commitment will fix instability. That hope carries risk. Children do not stabilize shaky ground, they magnify it. When Madeline comes back with the test, tension spikes again. Luke asks what he hopes it says. His answer holds two truths. He admits the timing feels wrong. He admits he wants a future with her. Both statements coexist. Neither resolves the conflict. They only soften the moment enough to keep things moving. Notice how hope keeps people in motion even when clarity stays out of reach. The result lands. Negative. Relief floods the space. You can feel shoulders drop, breathing slows. The crisis passes, but the silence afterward tells the real story. No cheering, no laughter, no reset. One threat disappears, everything else remains. Luke and Madeline look at each other knowing nothing changed. Trust still fractured. Power still uneven. Fear still driving decisions. The test answered one question. It did not answer the one haunting them both. How do two people build safety when neither feels secure? The camera does not need to linger. The truth sits there on its own. The relationship survives the scare. The problems stay standing. The first thing that hits is relief. Madeline breathes easier. Luke exhales. And for a fleeting second, it feels like the storm might have passed. No baby, no immediate life-changing responsibility. That tiny moment of calm is almost shocking after the tension of the last few days. You can see it in their body language. They slump a little. Their faces soften. But the relief is fragile. It's like holding a glass of water over a pit. One wrong move and it shatters. But almost instantly, the relief fades. Because while the pregnancy scare has passed, it hasn't erased the deeper issues between them. Luke's jaw tightens again as he remembers the property disagreement. Madeline's eyes flash with frustration as she thinks about how she was cut out of decisions that should have been joint. The land is not just land, it's power, security, and a symbol of trust. And the trust is broken. Madeline doesn't lash out, at least not violently. Instead, her fear becomes strategic. She's no longer just reacting emotionally. Every question she asks, every edge in her voice, it's about measuring the ground beneath her. She's thinking, if Luke can't be trusted to share decision-making, how can I be sure he won't leave me hanging in every other part of life? Her fear of abandonment, once dismissed as immaturity or drama, now reads like calculated self-protection. And you can't blame her. After all, she's already seen how quickly his focus can shift, how easily promises get bent to his advantage. Luke, on the other hand, is visibly frustrated. He's exhausted from trying to reassure her, from trying to manage the mess of their lives and their emotions. His words are sharp, clipped. He wants Madeline to trust that he's doing everything for both of them. He wants her to step back, stop overthinking, and let him be the man in his terms. But here's the thing, trust is not a one-way street. You can't demand faith without showing transparency. And that's the tension that keeps their conversations so raw and uncomfortable. Every glance between them carries a weight now. Madeline is constantly calculating, watching for signs, testing whether Luke's actions match his words. Luke is trying to balance anger, love, and frustration. It's exhausting, even from the outside. And you can see why they get stuck in this loop. They care, but the very things that should connect them are the ones tearing them apart. Even without a pregnancy on the horizon, the stakes feel enormous. Every argument about the land, every mistrustful pause, every slight miscommunication is a microcosm of the larger fear. What happens if one of them chooses security over the relationship? or the relationship over security. Madeline's insistence on joint ownership isn't just about property. It's about feeling valued, included, and seen. Luke's insistence on controlling the land isn't malicious, but it highlights a disconnect between intention and perception. You start to notice small cracks widen, a slight hesitation when Luke talks about future plans, a subtle edge when Madeline mentions her worries. Those tiny moments of tension accumulate until they're almost unbearable. You get the sense that they could blow up over something trivial. Something as small as a missed phone call or a misplaced email could ignite another fight. And that's terrifying, because it's not just a disagreement, it's a reminder that their foundation is shaky. Madeline's fear of being left is mirrored by Luke's fear of being questioned. He's operating on instinct, reacting to her challenges like threats, while she's reading him with heightened awareness. Both are trapped by their own perceptions of what the other is capable of, and it's exhausting. And yet, there's a strange kind of intimacy in it. The fact that they still communicate, still show emotion, still care about the outcome, means there's hope. But hope alone doesn't fix structural cracks. By the end of this stretch, it's clear. The pregnancy scare was only the surface drama. The real story is trust, control, and fear. The land fight, the secrecy, the lingering insecurities, they are the actual test. Not whether they can have a baby, not whether they can survive one argument, but whether they can navigate a relationship where the rules are constantly shifting and both partners are carrying emotional baggage the size of a house. And so, after the smoke clears, after the temporary relief has faded, the question lingers louder than ever. Are they choosing each other? Or are they choosing the comfort and security that comes from clinging to something familiar, even if it's broken? Greta is quiet, and you can feel the weight of what just happened pressing down on her. The breakup isn't just a split from Matthew, it's a fracture from a future she thought she wanted. There's grief in her eyes, but there's also a subtle relief, the kind that comes when you finally stop pretending. It's confusing, even for her. How can something so painful feel freeing at the same time? That tension is what makes her story hit so hard. Her apartment feels heavier than usual. The silence is loud. You watch her scroll through messages, pictures, and memories, and it's clear she's not just sad. She's processing every choice she made and every moment she ignored her instincts. She loved him, but love isn't always enough. And sometimes, listening to your gut is the only thing that keeps you sane. There's no applause for doing the hard, honest thing, but Greta knows it's necessary. She's nervous about the next step. Matthew's dad wants to speak with her, and even before the conversation begins, you can see the tension building. It's not just a father confronting a daughter-in-law, it's someone testing whether she'll bend under pressure. She's anticipating guilt, expectations, and subtle manipulation, but she's determined not to crumble. And that is a moment of quiet strength that hits differently than any dramatic showdown. When she walks into the room, Mark is calm, polite, the kind of father who seems reasonable on the surface. But there's an undercurrent, a subtle message that his concern for his son carries weight over her own feelings. Every word is measured, almost surgical. He asks questions about her decision, about her feelings, about Matthew's well-being. He's not shouting, he's not angry, but you feel the pressure anyway. It's psychological gravity, and it's exhausting just to watch. Greta responds carefully, balancing honesty with empathy. She wants to explain herself without getting trapped. She tells him how her feelings have changed, how she can't stay in a relationship where her heart isn't fully present. And even though she's firm, you can see the weight of the loss she's experiencing. Not just the relationship, but the family she cherished. There's real pain in that. Her emotions are layered: guilt, sadness, relief, fear. She knows that honesty will hurt Matthew, but she also knows that hiding the truth would be worse in the long run. And that's the point that makes this episode resonate. You watch someone make the tough choice, not because it's dramatic, but because it's morally right. And the tension in the room isn't just about conflict, it's about power, obligation, and the unspoken expectation to stay for someone else's sake. Mark's questions edge toward persuasion, implying she hasn't given the relationship enough time, suggesting she should try harder, that maybe she's missing something. But Greta doesn't waver. Her instincts, her emotional clarity, and her autonomy guide her responses. And that's where the empathy kicks in. You understand why it's hard for her, but you also respect the courage it takes to stay true to herself. Even in these early moments, the dynamics are complicated. Love is not black and white, and neither is loyalty. You start to realize that the real pressure comes not from anger, but from expectation. The expectation to sacrifice personal truth for someone else's comfort. And that's a kind of emotional weight most people don't get to see on TV. As she leaves the conversation, there's a brief pause, a quiet moment of processing. Relief is mingled with dread, because she knows the next part will hit harder. The confrontation is only beginning, and the emotional stakes are about to peak. But for now, she's standing her ground, and that sets the tone for what comes next. The question lingers. How much should love bend under the weight of obligation? And when does self-preservation become the only responsible choice? The room feels smaller the moment Mark begins speaking. He's calm, collected, almost like he's testing the air for cracks before he steps in. But every word carries weight. He isn't yelling or dramatic, yet his presence alone communicates expectation, concern, and the subtle pressure of obligation. You can feel it in Greta's posture, shoulders tense, eyes flicking to measure tone and intent. Mark starts by voicing Matthew's pain, explaining how heartbroken his son is. The words are straightforward, but the message underneath is loaded. You owe him this. You owe him consideration. You owe him another chance. And even though it's couched in love, it's a request for emotional labor. Greta listens, nods, but you can see the tension rising. She knows this isn't about persuasion. It's about assigning guilt for doing what she feels is right. Every question from Mark asks her to carry something heavier than her own feelings. Have you thought about giving this a real shot? Are you sure this is what Matthew deserves? Do you understand how much he loves you? Each line is a test, a way of layering responsibility for another adult's emotional state on someone who has already made the hardest choice. And Greta bears it with grace. She acknowledges his concern, her tone soft but firm. She doesn't dismiss Matthew's pain, but she refuses to let it dictate her own life. And here's the nuance the script highlights. Mark's worry isn't malicious. It's human. He loves his son, and watching someone he trusts walk away is hard. His words are tinged with real emotion, genuine sorrow. That's what makes the confrontation layered. He's not a villain. He's a man asking a daughter-in-law to bear a weight she never agreed to carry. And the empathy is palpable, even while it's uncomfortable. Greta responds carefully, balancing honesty with compassion. She explains that she tried to be present. She tried to love fully, but her heart has shifted. She clarifies that staying for the sake of expectation or guilt would be unfair to Matthew and to herself. She doesn't apologize for her feelings, but she does express regret for the hurt it causes. And you see the strength in that, autonomy without cruelty. The conversation naturally reveals the conditional nature of the love surrounding her. Matthew's parents love her as long as she fulfills a role, fiancé, future wife, part of their family. That love is not for who she truly is, but for what she provides to the household. Recognizing that, the audience understands why leaving feels so heavy. It's not just a breakup, it's a loss of belonging, of a family she admired and cared for. Mark continues, softer now, almost introspective, reflecting on what it means to love someone, but also allow them to walk away. His sorrow is real, and the script emphasizes that it's okay to feel grief for someone's choices without trying to control them. He acknowledges her honesty, even if he wishes the outcome were different. That moment of subtle acceptance underlines the emotional complexity. Pain and respect can coexist. Greta steps back slightly, the tension in her shoulders loosening just enough to show relief. She realizes the conversation isn't about changing her mind. It's about closure, understanding, and the difficult navigation of relationships that touch multiple hearts. And in that realization, the quietest form of loss hits. The recognition that leaving Matthew wasn't just about ending a romantic connection. It was about losing the family she had grown to love and the sense of home she thought she had. The room stills. Words have been exchanged, feelings have been aired, but the emotional echo lingers. You see in Greta's expression that she's carrying something heavier than heartbreak. She's mourning the ending of a life she imagined, a network of love that depended on her staying in a role she no longer fits. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but it's the moment the episode lands its deepest emotional punch. And at that point, you can't help but ask yourself, how often do we lose more than the relationship itself when we follow our instincts? And how much courage does it take to honor what our hearts really know is right? Looking back, the stories of Luke and Madeline and Greta and Matthew feel like mirrors. Both are about pressure. Pressure to stay, to compromise, to perform love instead of living it. The pregnancy scare, the land dispute, the father confrontation. They all ask the same question. Will you endure discomfort for what feels safe? Or will you act on what your heart truly says? For Luke and Madeline, fear keeps them tethered. The pregnancy test could have been a turning point, a chance to reset, but instead it exposes cracks that neither fully addresses. Luke's reassurance, meant to soothe, only masks his own doubts. Madeline's worry about abandonment reveals how deeply past trauma informs present choices. The same emotions that bind them also blind them. Across the story, Greta's confrontation illustrates the opposite side. Here, honesty acts as both sword and shield. She risks immediate pain to avoid long-term harm. The father's words, heavy with guilt, are a test of her autonomy. And she passes not because she's indifferent, but because she values clarity over comfort. Where Luke and Madeline circle uncertainty, Greta faces it head-on. Rewatching these moments, you notice the subtle flips. The pregnancy scare isn't just about a baby. It's about control, trust, and readiness. The father confrontation isn't just about family. It's about conditional love and the cost of self-preservation. Both situations ask the same emotional question. Will fear dictate your actions, or will integrity guide them? What's fascinating is how the outcomes shape perception. Luke and Madeline's relief at a negative test is temporary. The issues lurking beneath the surface remain, unspoken but urgent. In contrast, Greta's honesty closes a door, but opens a path to clarity, self-respect, and emotional freedom. The test results and the father talk both serve as catalysts, but the direction each couple moves depends entirely on the choices they make when faced with pressure. The act slows here intentionally, letting the weight of reflection settle. These aren't just reality TV moments, they're studies in human behavior. Fear can trap people in unhealthy patterns. Obligation can make us doubt our instincts. And yet, courage, quiet, deliberate courage, can redefine the trajectory of a relationship, or even of a life. By juxtaposing these stories, you start to see the invisible thread connecting them: emotional accountability. Luke and Madeline avoid the full consequences of honesty, which keeps them locked in a cycle of anxiety and mistrust. Greta embraces honesty, which frees her even in the midst of loss. And that contrast hits harder than any plot twist ever could. At the end of the day, the lesson is clear. Pressure tests character, fear tests loyalty, and honesty tests courage. The same moments can either bind or liberate, depending on how they are faced. And watching these two couples in parallel, you can't help but reflect. What would you do if the test came for you? As the episode winds down, there's a strange calm. Luke and Madeline sit with the relief of a negative test, but the air is heavy with unspoken tension. All the fights, all the fear, none of it disappears overnight. You can feel that nothing has truly been resolved. They're still circling the same questions, still weighing love against security, trust against control. Relief is fleeting when the real work hasn't even begun. Greta, on the other hand, steps out of the confrontation with a quiet, almost painful clarity. She knows she made the right choice, even though it cost her the life she imagined with Matthew and his family. The sadness is real, but so is the freedom of not compromising herself. Watching her navigate this pressure shows what it looks like to honor your instincts while acknowledging the emotional cost. There's no celebration here, only the sober weight of truth. And that's what makes this episode linger long after the screen goes dark. It's not about victory or defeat. It's about seeing how fear, obligation, and honesty collide, and how choices, sometimes excruciatingly hard, shape the people we are and the relationships we keep. You can feel relief, grief, and understanding all at once. That mix of emotions is exactly why these stories hit so deep. But just when you think the drama has paused, the thread pulls forward. Another couple is already facing a similar crossroads, yet this time, the pressure pushes them in the opposite direction. Will fear hold them together, or will honesty pull them apart? The answer is coming, and it promises to be just as complicated, just as emotional, and just as impossible to predict. The episode closes, but the story doesn't. The questions remain, and the suspense is already building for what's next.